My name is Lena. I'm 34, a senior architectural designer who still eats frozen dumplings for dinner and prefers books over brunch. I've never been the sheeny one in my family. That was always Julia, my older sister, the risk taker, the one who wore chaos like perfume. I, on the other hand, spent 12 quiet years building this life. Late nights and missed holidays, turning down impulse just to buy peace. A modest apartment on the 24th floor, paid for with every ounce of grit I had. It's not fancy. No marble counters, no sprawling views. But it's mine, and for once that felt like enough. Until Julia called. She'd sold her house, traveled the world, spent everything, and now my parents think I should open my heart and home to her family of 4. But this time, I didn't say yes. What did I do instead? That's when the story really begins. Growing up, I was always the quiet one. The one who didn't cause trouble, didn't demand attention, didn't make waves. Julia was the storm. She was older, louder, more magnetic. She wore ambition like a crown, even when it led nowhere. Every family gathering she had a new story, a new job, a new project, a new boyfriend, a new business idea. People called her brave, unpredictable, one of a kind. They called me responsible. The kind of word people use when they don't know what else to say. While Julia bounced from one adventure to the next, I kept my head down. I took internships while she took sabbaticals. I lived in shoebox rentals while she shared posts from yoga retreats. I listened to lectures and deadlines. She followed sunsets. I never resented her. Not really. I just assumed, over time, we'd grow into our own spaces and figure things out. And in a way, I guess I did. At 27, I landed my first steady job at a mid-sized architecture firm. It wasn't glamorous. I spent years doing guide revisions, coffee runs, and sitting through meetings where no one remembered my name. But I learned, I listened, I stayed. And slowly, things changed. By 30, I had a promotion. By 31, I started saving seriously. At 32, I stopped renewing leases and bought my own place. It was nothing extravagant. A 3-bedroom apartment in an aging building on the quieter side of the city. No concierge, no gym. But it had tall windows and hardwood floors, and a view that turned gold at sunset. I signed the papers with trembling hands and spent my first night there eating takeout on the floor. Alone, barefoot, and stupidly proud. Nobody celebrated with me. Julia was off in Bali with her wellness startup. My parents didn't say much beyond, "That's nice, dear." But I didn't mind. That space became mine in every way. I painted the walls myself, built the bookshelves from scratch. I knew every creak in the floorboards, every stubborn light switch. It was quiet, peaceful, an anchor. Meanwhile, Julia kept moving. Thailand, Portugal, then back to the States, then off again. Every now and then, she'd crash with our parents for a few weeks. Sometimes I'd get a text, "A stranger, still doing the 9 to 5 thing," always followed by a picture of some exotic beach or a rooftop bar in a city I'd never see. We were polite, distant, sisters in name, orbiting different worlds. Then, one night, about 6 months ago, I got a call from my mom. She sounded excited. "Guess what, sweetheart? Julia sold her house." I blinked. Wait, she sold it. Oh yes! They made a killing. The market's insane right now. She and Alex are going to travel full-time. With the kids! Isn't that just incredible? I didn't say much. I just nodded and murmured something like, "Wow, that's bold." But inside, something clenched. Julia had 2 children, Ely 6 and Mia 4. I loved those kids even if I barely saw them. But I couldn't imagine packing up their whole lives on a whim. No stability. No plan. Just vibes and plane tickets. I told myself it wasn't my business. I stayed in my routine. Woke up at 6, worked long hours, came home, cooked, read. Sometimes I saw Instagram updates, smiling selfies in Morocco, taglines like, "Wandering souls find richer roots." It was classic Julia. Romantic, chaotic, beautiful. My mom couldn't stop gushing. My dad just smiled and said, "She's always had spirit." And me. I kept showing up, paying my mortgage, watering my plants. Then silence. About 2 months after that call, the updates stopped. No more pictures. No more hashtags. No new flights or locations. I didn't think too much of it until I got a text from Julia. "Hey, are you?" I call. No emojis. No sparkle. Just that. That was the moment I felt it. That shift. The tone. The unspoken weight behind her words. I sat down, looked around my quiet apartment. This space I had built brick by brick with every choice I made to not be like her. And I answered, "Sure. Call me now." And just like that, everything started to unravel. The phone barely rang once before I picked up. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice light. "Hey." Her voice was tight, scratchy, not sick, strained. There was a long pause. I could hear rustling in the background, a child's voice whining, and then a man murmuring something I couldn't make out. Then Julia said it. "We're in trouble." I didn't say anything. I just let the words hang in the air. She rushed to fill the silence. "We thought we could stretch the money longer. We really did. The house sold for way more than we expected, and at first it felt like we were set. We figured a year abroad, Just living light, working remote gigs here and there. It sounded doable. You know? I didn't answer. Because no, I didn't know. She kept going. But it's expensive. So much more than we thought. Even when we try to go cheap, hostels, budget stays, street food, it adds up. Especially with kids. Ely got sick in Spain. We had to pay out of pocket for care. And Maya, she misses her bed, her toys. She cries at night. And Alex. Her voice faltered. I could picture her sitting somewhere unfamiliar, the kids restless, and her husband growing quiet and distant. The dream cracking around them. Julia. I said gently. Where are you now? We're back in the city. Staying at a friend's for a couple nights, but we can't stay long. We've looked at short-term rentals, but everything's so expensive. We're trying to figure it out. I was wondering if we could stay with you, just for a while. And there it was, the ask. I closed my eyes and leaned back into my chair. My apartment suddenly felt smaller, tighter. I thought about the guest room, mostly storage, the office where I took all my remote calls. The third room held my art supplies, my yoga mat, and my peace. I mean, she added quickly, just until we get back on our feet. We'll find something soon. It's just been a lot. I exhaled slowly. How long are we talking? 10 months. Maybe less. We'd be out during the day. You wouldn't even notice us. I nearly laughed. 4 people. 2 of them are under the age of 7. In a 3-bedroom apartment with thin walls and 1 bathroom. You do realize 10 months isn't short term, right? I said, trying to keep my voice even. I know, she said quickly. But Lena, we don't have anywhere else to go. Mom and Dad's place is too small, and we don't have enough saved for another rental yet. We used everything to fund the trip. I thought we'd have more time to rebuild before coming back. But, she trailed off. We didn't plan for this. No kidding. Still, I didn't want to come off as cold. I knew what it took to make that call. Julia wasn't the type to admit defeat. That she was asking me now meant things were worse than she was saying. I stayed quiet, weighing the words carefully. I can't have 4 people living here for almost a year, I said. I'm sorry. This isn't a big space, and I need it to stay stable, for my work, my sanity, but I can help you find a rental. I can even help cover the deposit. I want to support you. But this isn't something I can say yes to. The silence on the other end was sharp. Then came her voice, lower, brittle. So that's it. You're saying no. I'm saying I'll help. Just not by giving up my home. She didn't respond right away. When she did, it was with a bitter little laugh. You've always been like this, tightly wound, always needing control. Maybe that's why you're still alone in that box of yours. That one landed harder than I expected, but I stayed calm. That box took me 12 years to build. I'm not going to apologize for protecting it. More silence. Then, finally, she said, fine, thanks for nothing, and hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at the blank screen. I should have felt relieved. I'd drawn a boundary. I stood my ground. But what I felt instead was dread. Because Julia rarely backed down this quickly. And I knew, somewhere deep in my gut, this wasn't the end of it. It didn't take long. Just 2 days after Julia hung up on me, my phone lit up with a call from Mom. I stared at it for a second before answering. I already knew what this was about. Still, I hoped, foolishly, that maybe she was just checking in. Sweetheart, she said. Her voice was gentle. Too gentle. How's work? Busy. I replied. Deadlines are coming up. Another pause. Then she said it, like she couldn't hold it in any longer. Julia called me. Of course she did. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. I figured. She's really struggling, Lena. She didn't want to tell you how bad it is, but they're out of options. They've been sleeping on a friend's pull-out couch. The kids are all over the place, and Alex hasn't been able to pick up any jigs since they got back. I didn't say anything. Mom sighed. She told me you said no. That you refused to even let them stay for a while. I opened my mouth, then shut it. What was the point? Julia had already framed it her way. I didn't refuse to help, I said carefully. I offered to help cover a deposit on a rental. I even said I'd help them look. Mom, I can't have 4 people living here for 10 months. I need this space to function. I know, honey, she said quickly, her voice warm and soothing. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just think maybe you're being a little too rigid. Just for a while. Think of Ellie and Mia. They're so little, it wouldn't be forever. I know it wouldn't. I said, trying to keep my tone even, but it would still be long enough to disrupt my life completely. They're your family, Lena. And I'm not. That hung in the air like static. She didn't answer right away. Then she tried again, softer this time. Julia's always been impulsive. You've always been the careful one. I think maybe you don't realize how lucky you are sometimes. Lucky. That word stung more than I expected. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My mom kept talking, rambling now, about how hard it is to raise kids, how everyone needs help sometimes, and how this is just one of those seasons we should all get through together. By the time we hung up, I felt like I'd just walked through a field of landmines. Carefully, politely, and still came out bruised. But the worst part, I knew what was coming next. Dad. If Mom was the velvet glove, Dad was the hammer. Sure enough, the next day, I got a text from him. "Call me, we need to talk." I took a breath, then dialed. He picked up on the first ring. "Lena," he said. No preamble, no warmth. "What the hell is going on?" "Dad," I said, already bracing myself. "Your sister's in crisis. She has 2 kids, and you're sitting up there in your nice little apartment acting like she's some stranger." I swallowed hard. "I offered to help. You said no. That's all I need to know." His voice was sharp, full of disappointment. "Dad, it's not that simple. They want to live here for nearly a year. Rent-free. With no plan. And they're not just asking for a place to crash. They're asking me to give up my space, my peace, and my routine." He scoffed. "Peace, routine. Lena, this is real life. You think life just fits neatly into your little boxes. You need to loosen up, learn to bend a little. That's what family is about." "No," I said firmly. "Family is about respect, and asking me to carry the weight of someone else's reckless choices without even a plan. That's not respect." There was silence. Then, "You've changed." I bit my tongue. That old line again. Code for "you're not doing what we expect, so we don't recognize you." "No," I said. "I've just stopped apologizing for having boundaries." Another pause. Then he added, low and cutting, "Julia would have done it for you." I laughed. I couldn't help it. It burst out of me, bitter and sharp. "Dad, Julia has never done anything for anyone but Julia." He didn't like that. "I hope you can live with yourself," he snapped. "Because when this all comes back around, when she's back on her feet, don't expect anyone to show up for you." And just like that, he hung up. I stared at the screen. Not even a goodbye. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was loud, thick, heavy. I'd done what I believed was right, but somehow, I'd become the villain in my own family for simply saying no. And I knew deep down, Julia wasn't finished yet. I thought saying no would be the hard part. I was wrong. The hard part was watching how quickly no turned me into a villain. The quiet sibling, the stable one. The one who always said yes, suddenly framed as cold, selfish, and heartless. And Julia, she was just struggling. Just asking for help. Just trying to get back on her feet. Everyone else got to be human. I got to be the obstacle. I was still stewing in that thought when, one Saturday morning, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door, and there she was. Julia, standing in my hallway like nothing had happened. She was dressed in one of those oversized scarves she always wore, like she just stepped off a flight from somewhere spiritual. Her hair was messier than usual. Her eyes looked tired. Behind her stood Alex, carrying a worn duffel bag, and next to them were the kids, Eli and Mia, small, quiet, wide-eyed. I froze. "Hey," she said. Like this was normal. Like we were just catching up over brunch. I didn't say anything. "We've looked everywhere," she started. "Craigslist, Facebook, even temporary stays with friends. Nothing's working. It's too expensive. We can't find anything decent. Not with 2 kids." Alex added, "We're out of options." "Lena," I glanced down at the kids. Eli was holding a dinosaur toy. Mia clutched a blanket. I looked back at Julia. Her expression wasn't pleading. It was expectant, like she was done asking. "We just need time," she said. "A few months. That's all." "You said 10. I reminded her. "Plans change." I didn't move from the doorway. "And you still don't have one." She stiffened. "We're regrouping. Figuring things out. But we can't do that from a car. Or someone's couch." I kept my voice steady. "Julia, I told you. This isn't a space that can handle 4 more people. I work here. I rest here. This is my sanctuary. We'll be quiet. We'll stay in one room. The kids are used to small spaces. We'll make it work." "No," I said. "You want to make me work around your chaos." "That's not the same?" Her eyes narrowed. "So you're really going to turn away your sister and her kids?" "I'm not turning anyone away," I replied. "I'm refusing to let you take over the one place in my life that's safe." Alex shifted uncomfortably. "Would help out. With chores, cooking. We won't just freeload. But you won't pay rent." Silence. "Not until we get stable," Julia said. "You sold your house to chase a dream with no backup." I said. "No, you want to use me as plan B and pretend it's generosity." Her voice rose. "You're being dramatic." "No, I'm being honest." There it was again. That flicker in her eyes. That mix of disbelief and offense. Like I had no right to draw a line. Like boundaries were betrayal. "We thought you'd understand," she said, shaking her head. "You've always been so alone. We figured maybe you'd want family around for once." That hit harder than I wanted it to. I bit back my reply. Instead, I stepped aside, just a little, and said, "If you want to come in for coffee, fine. But you're not staying here." Julia didn't move. "Seriously?" she asked. "You're really going to let us walk out of here with nowhere to go? You have parents. You have friends. You have options. You just don't like any of them." Her jaw clenched. "You don't know what it's like out there." "No," I said. "Because I stayed. I built something. I made sure I'd never have to find out." We stared at each other for a long moment. Then she turned to the kids. "Come on," she said coldly. "Let's go." They turned, walked away. Alex didn't look at me once. She didn't slam the door. She didn't scream. But the silence she left behind felt heavier than any argument. I thought that maybe, just maybe, after Julia walked away, the storm would pass. I was wrong. 3 days later, I opened the door to find my parents standing on my doorstep. My mother was holding a container of soup like this was just another casual visit. My father had that look on his face, the one that always meant, "We need to talk, and I expect you to listen." They didn't wait for an invitation. They walked right in. My living room suddenly felt smaller. My home, my sanctuary, was no longer mine. Mom set the soup on the counter like some kind of peace offering. "We thought we'd stop by, just to talk." I already knew what this was. But I stayed quiet. I sat across from them, folded my arms, and waited. Dad was the first to speak. "Julia and Alex told us what happened. The kids cried the whole night after they left here. Maya asked if you didn't love them anymore." I flinched. Not because it was true, but because it was manipulative. "She brought them to my front door with bags," I said evenly. "That wasn't a conversation. That was an ambush. She's desperate," Mom said gently. "And she's your sister." I kept my voice calm. "So I'm not allowed to have boundaries because we share DNA." My father's face darkened. "What you call boundaries, I call selfishness." There it was. He leaned forward. "You have a good job, a big apartment, no husband, no kids. What exactly are you protecting so fiercely in here?" I stared at him. That sentence, so casually cruel, took all the air out of the room. "You think that, because I'm single, I have no life," I said, my voice low. "That because I don't have a family of 4, this space is just excess." He didn't answer. So I kept going. "I built this alone. Every piece of furniture in here, every bill paid on time, every wall I painted with my own hands. And now I'm being told it's my duty to give it all up, because Julia spent her money chasing a fantasy." "She took a risk," Mom said. "You've never taken one." "No," I snapped. "I've taken plenty. You just never cared about mine because they weren't glamorous. I risked everything to stay in this city when everyone else moved away. I risked my mental health to survive in a job that burned me out for years. I risked loneliness to build a life on my own terms." "You think you're the only one who's suffered?" Dad said sharply. "No, but I am the only one being punished for saying no." They both fell silent. And for the first time, I didn't rush to fill it. Then my mom tried a different tactic. "We're not asking you to give up your apartment forever. Just let them stay for a while, until they figure things out. They need time." "They've had time," I said. "They sold their house. They chose this. They didn't think it would go this badly," she murmured. "That's not my fault," I said. "And it's not my responsibility to fix." Another silence. Then my dad stood up. "I don't know what's happened to you, Lena," he said coldly. "You used to be so caring. Now you're just cold." I stood up too. "No," I said. "I used to be quiet. There's a difference." He looked surprised, maybe even a little hurt. But I didn't flinch. "You want to talk about cold?" I continued. "Where were you when I moved in here and no one showed up to help? When I got promoted and you said, 'That's nice, but your sister just opened a retreat in Bali.' Where was all this family unity then?" My mom looked down at her hands. "I never said I wouldn't help." I added. "I offered money. I offered to help them find a rental. But because I won't let them move in and turn my life upside down, I'm the bad guy." "You're twisting this," Dad said. "No, I'm finally untwisting it." He stared at me like he didn't recognize who I'd become. And honestly, that made 2 of us. But I wasn't ashamed. Because for the first time, I wasn't being the responsible one to make them comfortable. I was choosing me. "I think you should go," I said. My mother blinked. "Lena, I love you, but you can't guilt me into surrendering my peace. Not this time." There was a long pause. Then my father muttered something under his breath, walked past me, and opened the door. My mother followed. She turned back one last time, her eyes glassy. "She's your sister." "I know," I said. And I still said no. The door clicked shut, and I stood there in the silence. Not empty, not broken, just steady. But I knew that wasn't the end. Because people like Julia, they don't walk away quietly. They escalate. I didn't hear from Julia again after that night. No calls, no texts, nothing. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, it was over. That she'd accept my decision and move on. Then, one morning, I opened Facebook. It was the first post on my feed. A long block of text. Julia's profile picture at the top. Her smiling face. Sunlight hitting her hair just right. The caption. Some people have everything but no heart. I didn't have to read much to know where it was going. Still, I read every word. She painted the picture carefully. We're a family of 4. We took a leap of faith to give our kids a year of adventure and growth. What came back humbled, not defeated, just in need of support. And someone we thought we could count on turned us away. No rent, no compassion, not even a couch. I never thought my own sister would choose space over family. I sat there, staring at the screen. There were photos too, of the kids, looking tired but adorable, of her and Alex, holding hands in some grainy airport shot. And the comments, they poured in. People I barely knew. People I hadn't spoken to since high school. Even family members I only saw on holidays. Unbelievable. How could someone turn away their own sister? Family is supposed to show up in hard times. She must be one of those people who only care about square footage and throw pillows. My heart breaks for you. Julia, stay strong. Some comments named me directly. Some were subtler. All of them stung. And then came the messages. Private ones. From cousins, old co-workers, friends of friends. Hey, saw your sister's post. Is everything okay? Did that really happen? Just checking in. I hope it's not true. I didn't respond to most of them. At first, I thought maybe I could write it out. Let the drama die down. But then one of my coworkers sent me a screenshot from a family Facebook group I wasn't even in. My aunt had reposted Julia's story and added her own commentary. I always knew Lena was like this. Cold. Rigid. Probably learned it from all that solo living. That did it. I wasn't just being quietly criticized now. I was being turned into a cautionary tale. The ice queen. The career woman who chose a sofa over sisterhood. I could feel it building. Anger, frustration, the old familiar guilt, and I knew if I stayed silent, I'd never get to own my truth. So, I opened my laptop, and I wrote, not a rant, not a clapback, just the facts. AF, since my name is being discussed publicly, I'll respond publicly. Yes, Julia asked to stay in my home for 10 months. Yes, I said no. But here's what's missing. I offered to help cover a rental deposit. I offered to help them find affordable housing. What I didn't offer was to give up the only space I've worked 12 years to build. My peace, my privacy, and my boundaries. They sold their house without a backup plan. They chose a lifestyle. I'm now being blamed for not rescuing them from its consequences. I love my niece and nephew. I care about my sister. But love doesn't mean self-sacrifice. Help doesn't mean erasing myself. This is not about lack of compassion. It's about refusing to be a crutch for people who keep jumping with no net and expect others to catch them every time. You can judge me, but I'm done explaining. I hit post. Then I turned off my phone. It didn't take long for the comments to roll in. A split between people who called me brave and those who called me bitter. Some tried to stay neutral. Some didn't even try. And of course, Julia messaged me. A single line. Wow. Can't believe you'd humiliate us like this. No apology. No acknowledgement that she went public first. I didn't reply. Instead, I blocked her. Not out of spite. Out of necessity. The truth is, when someone's willing to burn down your reputation to protect their illusion, the only way to win is to stop playing their game. Later that night, my dad called. His voice wasn't angry this time, just disappointed. You really had to post that? He asked. I didn't start it, I replied. But I'm finishing it. He didn't argue, just sighed. You know this won't heal anything. I'm not trying to heal it, I said. I'm trying to survive it. Another silence. Then, well, you've made your choice. And I had. I'd chosen clarity over approval, truth over peacekeeping, boundaries over guilt. It didn't feel triumphant. It just felt clean. For the first time in weeks, I slept without waking up in the middle of the night, replaying conversations in my head. Let them talk. Let them speculate. Let them mourn the version of me that always said yes. Because that version, she's gone. It's been 3 weeks since I posted my response. The comment threads have quieted. Julia hasn't reached out again. My parents have stopped calling. The group chats have moved on to birthdays and baby showers, as if nothing happened. But the silence feels different now. Not heavy, not waiting to be broken. Just earned. I used to think peace came from keeping everyone else comfortable, saying yes, being flexible, not making waves. It took me 34 years to realize peace actually comes from not apologizing for your boundaries. People still talk. I know that. An aunt unsubtly hinted I had changed. A cousin messaged to say, no hard feelings, but you could have handled it more quietly. But I don't shrink from that anymore. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped pretending. I go about my days now the way I always did, Early mornings, long work hours, and music while cooking dinner. But there's a difference I can't explain. Like, I'm finally living in this apartment. Not as someone renting space from family expectations, but as someone who owns her story. One afternoon last week, I passed by the guest room. It's still full of half-finished shelves and art supplies. Still mine. Still unoccupied. For a moment, I wondered what would have happened if I'd said yes. 10 months. 4 people. 1 bathroom. No boundaries. I closed the door. Not with guilt. With gratitude. A few days ago, I got a letter in the mail. Not a text. Not a DM. An actual handwritten letter. From my mother. She didn't apologize. She didn't defend Julia. She just wrote, "I didn't realize how much you've grown. I hope you're okay. I miss you." I read it twice. Then I folded it gently and tucked it away in a drawer. Maybe one day we'll talk again. Maybe not. Either way, I'm not holding space anymore for people who only see my value when I'm giving something up. Because here's what I know now. You can love your family and still choose distance. You can offer help and still say no to being used. You can be a good daughter and a good sister and still refuse to be a doormat. You don't owe anyone your peace to prove you care. I stand by the window most nights now, watching the city move below me. I breathe in the quiet like it's mine to keep. And for the first time in a long time, it is.